Are PPP loan applications being held up by first banks that do nothing on your application while you go elsewhere? That's an LALATE exclusive, and thanks for tuning in for Friday. We have a lot for you. As always, like and subscribe to this channel, and drop your comments below, and we may feature them in tomorrow's video. We have a lot of comments over all the different videos since yesterday. We haven't done a PPP video in a few days, but we certainly dropped a big Bombshell exclusive today on LALATE. I hope you saw it. PPP. The loan forgiveness period on PPP is coming up in June, so we may start covering PPP in a great more detail. A lot of you have been reaching out to us in other mechanisms through Twitter and Instagram and everywhere else with your questions. So we're going to broaden our horizon today and answer them, but also first give you this exclusive. LALATE has learned that if you had initially applied for a PPP loan with one bank, and that bank did nothing for you, and then went elsewhere and applied with another bank, and that bank did work for you, did get everything processed, that second loan will be denied. Why? Because the first bank has teed up your name as a reservation in the SBA website. No one had heard of this until today. When the PPP loan process first came out, the stories were basically the following. People were having problems with big banks. They had applied with their big banks. They were big bank customers, JP Morgan Chase and Bank America. They were big bank customers for many, many years. And so they went to their bank and applied for a PPP loan. And when I mean apply, I mean apply. I don't mean request to apply. They applied. Days went on and they heard nothing from their bank. They heard that funds were running out from the PPP during the first process, and they were very upset. Frustrated, they went elsewhere. They went to what were called fin banks, or small financial institutions, or credit unions in other states, or small banks in other states. The stories were featured everywhere. They were featured on LALATE, they were featured in the New York Times, they were featured in every major news publication. And the stories were basically that they went to other banks and got approved for their application with the lender bank, that the lender bank submitted to SBA, and the application was approved by SBA, which means funded by SBA. They received the funds from the SBA for their PPP loan. This was during the first cycle of PPP. It's now changed, or more is coming to light. LALATE has exclusively learned that people who initially applied with their first big bank and have gone elsewhere are facing enormous difficulties that they never envisioned. Here's what's happening. When you originally applied with your big bank for a PPP loan, what the big bank did was take your business information, whether it's your EIN, your social security number, and filed that with SBA. So SBA immediately got a reservation booked on its files for you with your first bank. Weeks went on, your first bank may have contacted you, may have asked you for documents, you may have provided them to your first bank. And then you got frustrated perhaps with your first bank. Silence erupted, they were ghosting you, they weren't answering your phone calls, they weren't available. So you got frustrated, you went somewhere else. You may have gone to Fundera or a lot of these Square or PayPal or a lot of these other institutions. And you went through the application process. You thought, hey, this is great. This is easy. This is fast. They asked for your forms. You gave them the forms. They said, well, you're approved for our purposes, and we're submitting you to SBA. Well, it now is the case, at least in the second round of SBA's PPP process, at least as of this week, that PPP is now blocking applicants because they first had applied with another bank that still has the file number. What does this mean? And what do you do? LALATE in its reporting today basically compared it a little bit like going to a delicatessen, going to a deli counter. You go to the deli counter and you want to buy some pastrami. So your first bank that you do business with pulls a ticket to buy some pastrami. And you wait, and you don't get the pastrami. And you wait, and you get frustrated. So you decide to have another bank go and get the pastrami for you. They pull a ticket, and they present it to the deli counter. Guess what? The deli counter says, no, we have to do the first ticket first because that was pulled by another bank. It's very problematic, and no one saw it coming until today. So what do you do, and how do you fix it? So LALATE has learned that the only way you fix it is not with SBA. In fact, a lot of lenders are actually telling customers to go to SBA. Not true. SBA is saying that the only way you can fix it is go to the first bank that you initially filed an application with that presumably has that account application number under your business or individual name secured with SBA to release it, to drop it. And at that point, go back to the second bank that you want to do business with, tell them it has been released, and they can then proceed with your PPP loan. Now, this may not have happened to some of you early on. This may not have been involved with some of you in recent weeks, but this is currently the situation now. LA has confirmed this with two representatives at SBA, that this is actually the situation, that you cannot apply for PPP with two different lending institutions, that you have to actually cancel the first with the lender before going to a second. Otherwise, the second's going to be denied by SBA. All right, another question that's coming up in some of the comments, and we're here to answer it right now, is can you decline the SBA, the PPP loan? Absolutely. LA has learned that basically as the forgiveness period comes up now in June, a lot of businesses just don't want this PPP loan. They're hearing too many horrible things. We have told you to stay away from it. We have told you absolutely do not get it. And a lot of businesses are saying they don't want it. They don't want it. Some of them would rather have the EIDL loan. Other businesses rather just get a normal bank loan at a lower interest rates. Interest rates are down to 1%. And so they don't want this PPP loan, which has a short maturity level. So what do? Very simple. When you get an email from your bank saying you have been funded, accept the following to receive the PPP funds, don't accept. SBA says that's all you have to do. You simply do not accept the request and you're not funded. To make it even simpler, this is not like the EIDL grant. It's not like you wake up one morning, you see funds drop in your account. SBA will not deliver the PPP money unless you accept to receive funding. Unless you actually, at the very end, receive an email that says, from your lender, that says, you've been approved, funding is going to drop in your account, except for funding. Until you accept for funding, you won't be funded. All right, forgiveness. A lot of people have been asking about forgiveness, and we are certainly going to start to address it a little bit more and see if this becomes a big hot issue. And if it does, drop in the comments below. LALATE has said to you that forgiveness is really a horrible thing with PPP that cause you to stay away. The forgiveness provisions are the following: that you have to put people back to work now, whether or not you're in a stay-at-home order, or whether or not you're impacted by anything else. Pay them the salaries, submit that form's proof of payment to your lender, and hope your lender submits that to SBA all on time. If you don't, you're stuck with a grant. You're stuck with a loan. Your loan is not forgiven. The concept of forgiveness is that everything is done right, timely, and in there as requested by middle June. But what if you can't? I mean, the problem is the following. LALATE has reported that so many of these banks simply just don't want to communicate on any level personal interaction with a customer. So imagine you submit your documents to them for PPP forgiveness in early June. You think you've done it right. You've watched the channel. You've watched other things. You've read up. You know what you have to do for loan forgiveness. You submit the documentation, and then you wait. And the bank that you're dealing with doesn't respond. They don't answer the telephone. They don't respond to email. They say they're looking at it, and they give you some sort of nonchalant, nothing, much of nothing statement. The end result is horror. You could be stuck with a loan that has a very short maturity. And what makes this worse is the following. Imagine you have a loan for $100,000, and you spent all the money as you were supposed to. You submit all the documentation as you're supposed to. And then that lender that you really never done business with until this process doesn't do what they're supposed to do. Guess what? Within a very short period of time, you have to pay that $100,000 back with interest. But how can you? Where do you have it? You've already spent the money. That's why the PPP loan process is not what LALATE would recommend. It's too dependent upon a personal relationship with your bank. Now, there are situations in which some of you may have that, and we appreciate your comments. We receive comments from in all different places. We're getting them in Twitter DMs and everywhere. And yes, some of you actually have said that you have actual personal relationships with bank VPs, and bank VPs are calling you in the middle of the night. You know, we've seen that on CNBC reports where individuals were talking about their lenders and that they've had a long-standing relationship, and they call them on the weekend, and they have their direct cell phone number. That's one thing. But if it's a bank you've never dealt with, that you have no contact with, that you don't have a direct phone number, that no one answers the phone, that they send you emails from that don't have a person's name on this, do you really want to get involved with this process? If you're watching this video and you're concerned about what you've gotten yourself into, you can turn the money right back, but that's a process unto itself. But if you receive the money and you haven't spent it, you might want to think about whether or not you need it. Lastly, if you're still in the process or you're thinking about doing the process, here's what to think about. A lot of you have dropped in comments that it's simple to apply. Yes, it's simple to apply. It's hard to get approved, but it's even scarier to get forgiven. Just applying is one thing. You go on the internet, you find a few websites, you find different lenders, you go to Fundera or wherever, lending this and lending that, PayPal and Square and everyone else, and you apply, and then they say thank you, and then they ask you for a document or two, and you upload it. Okay. That's one thing. You can do that. How about the lender submitting it to SBA and getting it funded? Well, that's a whole other process. But the big issue is when. What date? I mean, you're watching this video now in early May. Well, actually going almost into middle May now. So then what happens then? You got to get this funds right away and spend it right away and ask for forgiveness just within less than 4 weeks practically now. Do you really want to get involved with that? Finally, the forgiveness period. It has to be done so quickly. It has to be done so quickly, and you have to pay people, your employees, with the funds now. So if your business is closed, are you going to be paying for people that aren't doing anything? Is this really what you wish to be involved with? And what happens when that lender doesn't do what they're supposed to do? Let's imagine you do everything you're supposed to do. What happens when that lender doesn't do what they're supposed to do? You know the answer. I've already said it to you. The loan that you had hoped would be forgiven is not. As always, if you have comments, drop them below. This channel is expanding over the next couple of days as we add additional videos on other genres. LALATE is a sports and entertainment news site. So join us as we talk about other topics. As always, stay with LA for more.